Hi, everybody. Welcome back to another Second Breakfast podcast. I'm Andy Roth alongside Phil Duvall. Say hi, Phil.
Hello.
And it's Wednesday, which means it's time for another installment of Project Melway, brought to you by
The Gibsonian Institute.
10 seconds or less. Tell us what Project Melway is all about, Phil.
Andy and I watch every single Mel Gibson movie in chronological order.
There have been some ups and downs.
There have been some ups and downs.
There will continue to be some ups and downs.
If Mel Gibson is starring in it, we see it. That is our rule, and we do so in chronological order, which means we are at the fate of the gods, so to speak.
That's true.
Because we could orchestrate this. We could orchestrate this in many different ways, so that so that we could sprinkle some of the later movies in with the earlier stuff, or sprinkle some of the. But I still feel like we're out of the woods. Am I wrong? Don't you feel like we're out of the woods?
I do.
Except we're only halfway through. That's the scary part.
Yeah, indeed. It's so here's my thought about that. I think we're out of the woods because I was looking at what's left, and even the things that aren't good, he has very few movies left that aren't watchable.
Right.
There
are movies that I never have seen that I'll be interested to actually watch, like Conspiracy Theory and the Singing Detective.
I've never seen The Singing Detective. I have seen Conspiracy Theory, but I've only seen it once, and I remember enjoying it, and almost immediately forgetting about it.
Well, I feel like the funny thing is about now that he's a full-on movie star at this point, you're watching movies of a guy who's conscious of the fact that he's a movie star, and he's making starring vehicles. You know what I mean?
Agreed.
That's part of his deal. So
what are we talking about today?
Today we're talking about Lethal Weapon 3.
Lethal Weapon 3.
The magic is back. Back
squared.
Back again.
Yes.
I have so much to say about Lethal Weapon 3, Andy.
I gotta be honest. I was kind of terrified of watching this.
Lethal Weapon 3 is the movie that came out for Mel Gibson right after Hamlet.
Completely comparable in every way.
In some ways, he was like, how do I follow up Hamlet in a way that will make any sense for my career? And going back to the character that made him super famous is not actually a terrible idea.
I agree with you. I think that's right.
Lethal Weapon 3?
I enjoyed this movie more than I thought I would.
You were going to say I did not hate it.
I was considering saying I did not hate it, but that would be damning with fainter praise than I want to. I actually enjoyed myself.
I enjoyed it as well. I think it's a perfectly enjoyable movie. I think it is a deeply flawed movie. With, quite honestly, in my opinion, a couple of scenes are straight up some of my favorite scenes in the entire series.
Interesting. Okay.
And developments for the characters themselves that I think are amazing. Mm-hmm. But the movie itself is ridiculous.
Is problematic.
And I mean, Lethal Weapon 1 and 2 are ridiculous, but they managed to mediate that ridiculousness with some level of plausibility, darkness. They really go dark in a way. This tries to do that, but at this point, I think Lethal Weapon 3, you really see what the creators consider the formula. Mm-hmm. In the first one, there's no formula because it's just a movie.
Right.
In the second one, you see things that they kind of develop, and you go, oh, they did that in the last one, kind of, but it's sort of a development. By this time, it is, okay, we've got a Lethal Weapon movie, we've got to make sure to have this, and this.
Right.
You start to see the checklist of what they consider those things to be. Lethal Weapon 3 really solidifies that for me. Mm-hmm. So that's my opening salvo.
I like it. I wanna start because I think this is one of the less successful parts of the movie, so I want to get out of the way. One of the tropes, the motifs that you mentioned when we talked about Lethal Weapon 2 is that the Lethal Weapon series is a socially conscious action comedy series. Like each movie is about something. and you've
Right.
got in the first one, they don't they sort of imply it, but you've got a black man and a white man working together, and the part that's socially conscious about it is they're not right. It's not even mentioned, and the other thing is the unspoken the unspoken issues that Vietnam vets were having
Yeah. Yeah. It's
coming
very
back from
much,
the war.
yeah.
Yeah,
It's a very subtle but about, and you see a poster, you see a sticker you see a sticker on the refrigerator that says "End Apartheid Now," which you don't think much of at first until you've
right,
seen the movie a bunch of times and you watch all the other movies.
right,
Um,
and then
but it reminds me a lot, because I'm a kid of the '80s, of the Cosby Show, and how careful Cosby was to inject things into the Huxtable household that were very clearly statements about an appreciation of black culture and
yep.
black issues, but in a way that was just very organic and a part of their life. And you see that happening in Lethal Weapon movies. So anyway, so yes, the first one is Vietnam vets. You see the apartheid sticker. You also, there's just in general the drug issue, although that really was a big issue in the '80s. I mean, Just Say No was a big deal, but it was also, I mean, who's gonna,
Dare,
it's not really a
yeah,
social. It didn't feel like a social statement to be
sure.
that drugs are bad. And then the second one, it's very much about apartheid.
Very much about apartheid, and this third one. I mean, you might disagree with me, but I think it takes its time to speak about gang violence in
I
a
would,
way that
yes, and I would go further, but yes.
like in a way that and unlike the first two, it's sort of tacked on. And I don't mean to say that it's bad, and it is tied into the main storyline, but less so than the
Yeah.
issues that they bring up in the first and second movie.
They haven't really this one, the bad guys, it is about gang violence. It's about gun violence. I
Yep.
would actually call it one of the most violent and high body count movies that is, in my opinion, straight up anti-gun. um,
Right.
it's an
Right.
anti-gun movie where everyone shoots each other. But
Yep.
it is, I mean, it is the languages around getting guns off the streets. It's about people stealing guns. The assumption is that people shouldn't, in my opinion, it's the assumption is that people shouldn't have guns unless they're law enforcement, by and large. That's the way I saw it. But also tied in with that is the gang thing. Like, they didn't
Right.
really know what they were doing with it. But they did. I think if you had to pick a political statement they were going to make broad, it would be anti-gun and anti-gang.
Yep.
Which, but did you notice there were two other political statements that were interlaced, that were sort of Easter eggs in the movie?
Talk to me.
The first scene where the men are in the locker room, there is a sticker on one of the lockers that says "Fur is dead."
Wow.
Okay, then.
Audience, I'm just going to tell you now, Phil watched this movie significantly more closely than I did. Go ahead.
Then I
Yes.
did. Oh, I have no problem with that. And then when they're at, when there's a scene when they're at home and the mom gets a call, and it shows the daughter walk by, and this is the teenage daughter. She's like probably 14 or 15
Yeah.
top.
Yeah.
Did you see what her shirt said?
No.
Pro-choice. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Wow.
So I found this
Fascinating.
also interesting because the movie at this point, and I say this completely objectively, this series in this episode, it took a jump straight into all of the politics of it were well, I mean, anti-gang is not really a partisan issue. Everybody's anti-gang. But gun control, fur is dead, pro-choice, it took a jump straight into this is liberal politics. Which I'm not saying judgingly. I do find it really interesting that people consider Mel Gibson to be a conservative when he's, first of all, never called himself politically conservative, never
Right.
openly talked politically. We would assume that because he's a Catholic, he's pro-life.
Right?
But other than that, it is not a given that Roman Catholics are political conservatives by any means. Oftentimes, their politics lean towards more collectivist issues. Oftentimes, they'll be more concerned with, they believe the government should have more hand in taking care of the poor. They will be can very often be anti-war. So that's not a given at all what his politics are. But the assumption is that Mel Gibson is a conservative because he's a Christian.
Right.
Also, it's not just Mel Gibson's movie; it's a group of people's movies. But the point is,
that's politics. True. That's true.
But the politics here are liberal, and it's interesting how they do it, though. It's very like, here's a sticker on a locker room. Here's a T-shirt she's wearing that no one ever comments on, but you can see it. It's not like a question.
That's
and then
true.
and then the whole gun thing.
Yeah.
So yeah, this definitely becomes the issue du jour. What else do we need to talk about Lethal Weapon 3? Because there's so much to say.
I want to talk about. This can go later, but I want to talk about how like 30% of this movie is made up of other movies.
Other Lethal Weapon movies, or just other movies?
Mostly other Lethal Weapon movies.
Yeah.
But other movies in general.
Yes. Go ahead.
Well, first off, so I made a list, and I apologize. I only realized that I should make a list about 3/4 of the way through the movie, so this is incomplete.
Okay.
There are roughly 800 jillion callbacks to the toilet scene, the toilet bomb scene in Lethal Weapon 2.
It was like such a good scene that they were like, I guess we should say something about it again or something.
Yes, and some of it is there's one moment that's literally like Riggs and Murtaugh saying, functionally, "We are friends and we can prove it because I pulled you off of a toilet bomb once." and then, but what happens most of the time is Mel Gibson, Riggs, still can't seem to get it into his head if most people go on 3 or after 3.
Can't figure it out.
Can't figure it out. And
you'd think the one time that it saved your life, you'd have it figured out.
That's right. That's right. You know what? I don't know what you normally do, but going on 3 saved my life, so I'm going to do that this time. An odd, I don't want to call it a motif because I don't know what they're doing, but in both Lethal Weapon 2 and in Lethal Weapon 3, Riggs and a female are escaping for something in a truck, and they slow down to wait for a dog to catch up.
Oh my gosh, exactly.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It is exactly
I don't know if it's a motif so much as I think they'd want it to be a motif, but I think that word is too fancy for what they're doing, which is really just cut and paste.
There is yet another scene with and I say this without judgment. I agree with you, Phil. It's just the sign of a close family. There's another scene with Murtaugh taking a bath, and his family comes in with a cake.
They are very clearly showing that this is a very close family.
Yes.
And it's really also really interesting because, and then Leo Getz comes in and no one really cares. Like, no one's bothered by the fact that Leo's in the bathroom with him. He's more bothered than anyone else.
Yes.
Murtaugh clearly doesn't care if people are in the... But that's a joke from the second one where he's on the toilet, and when he does the whole thing where he's like, I finally had the bathroom to myself for the first time in 20 years.
And the last thing I had on my list, the collapse of a house.
Oh, I think that's yeah.
Yeah.
Although it's not their house. Their house basically gets left alone, except that it's up for sale.
Right. Yes. True. The only other movie that I, outside of the Lethal Weapon series, that I twigged onto, and it happened twice. One is a much stronger homage. The scene, it's straight out of Jaws, right? Where they're comparing their wounds, right? Mary Ellen Moffat, she broke my heart.
She broke my heart, right?
Right? I got that beat. Mel Gibson and Rene Russo are comparing war wounds from their time as officers.
Right.
And I mean, it works. You know, it's clearly like, in a way that it is not in Jaws. It's clearly flirting, and the scene does end with them, doing it. So, successful flirting.
In
Good job, both of you.
That is a successful flirting effort.
Yes.
If you flirt with Rene Russo,
yes,
and at the end of that flirting, the two of you are engaged in coitus, you have flirted successfully.
Right. You earn the flirting merit badge. And maybe it's just because Jaws was on my mind because of that scene. But so going back to the gang violence, without knowing who it is, Danny Glover, Murtaugh, kills a friend of his son's.
Oh,
who is in a gang. It's
shooting at him with a machine gun, to be fair.
Yeah, oh, yes, he is. It is in self-defense. It's a. Well, I forget. It's a good kill or a clean kill. Like it's not. There will be no investigation where he is
Right.
implicated as having done something wrong, right? Um, and but because his son is friends with him, he goes to the funeral, and the parents, as you might imagine, are just utterly distraught. And he tries to say something to the mother, and she slaps him. And
This scene has been troubling to me since the first time I saw it. Continue.
troubling as in it doesn't work, or troubling as in
Just continue, and then we'll talk.
okay.
I
Well,
apologize for interrupting.
that is like it reminded me so much of Mrs. Kintner, who because it
I don't know who
is
that is.
it is from Jaws,
Oh,
right? So a mother of a boy who died slaps a guy who is in charge, and
right.
it's debatable how much that guy is actually to blame for the death of the boy, right?
Yeah, no,
So
I mean like she slapped the guy who killed her son in self-defense, who was a
right.
cop, and her son was a gangbanger with a machine gun.
Yes, yes.
She's in the wrong there. And then the father goes, "You really want to help us, Mr. Murtaugh? You find the man who put the gun in my son's hand." No one put a gun in your son's hand. Your son bought a gun. Now, you can argue he shouldn't have been able to buy a gun, blah, 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 blah. Fine. But, like, let's not shirk responsibility here, parents.
I don't want to shirk responsibility, but clearly he wasn't the guy who started that gang.
No, no, I know. It's very frustrating to me. Like, that scene is very frustrating because I love Murtaugh so much, and he's, like, basically, like, as upstanding a human being as has ever been created,
Yes.
who does what he needs to do, which is terrible.
Yes.
And I wouldn't have shown up to the funeral, but good for him. I mean, it's pretty amazing.
Yes.
And
I agree with that.
I mean, and when he was walking over, you're like, oh, don't walk over there.
Yeah.
But it's just like this, like, sorry, my son shot at you with a machine gun. I don't know. I'm still working it out. I've never had my kid die in a gunfight before, and there are people. I mean, I have witnessed that. I have witnessed in my job.
Mm-hmm.
I watched a woman walk up to her dead son and see him dead for the first time after he'd been shot because of gang violence. I watched her face. So I don't pretend that woman should have been rational, and I hate that I like in this conversation I sound like I'm being callous. It's just always rubbed me the wrong way.
Yep.
But it doesn't mean it's not perfectly plausible.
Right.
And that she didn't do exactly what made perfect sense. But every
Right.
time I watch that scene, I'm just like, oh, like at
Right.
least it has Boys to Men. It's so hard to say goodbye to yesterday.
That's true. That is true.
Yeah, and that is obviously that whole plot, that subplot is the emotional underpinning of the movie.
Agreed. I agree. Some really nice scenes between Danny Glover and the kid who plays his son.
One of my favorite scenes in the entire Lethal Weapon series is the scene that he has, but well, basically the two big scenes. One is when he sees his son talking to the gangbanger, and then he's like trying to relate to him.
Right.
And he's like, "Word, Dad," and he's like, "Hey, word, Nick,"
Word.
and word. He goes like this, and then he looks at Riggs, and he's like, "Word, Riggs," and Riggs is like, "Word, Murtaugh," and Murtaugh's like, I don't. What does that mean? What are we saying? It's like
Word.
so adorable.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
then the scene where he teaches his son how to shave with
Yes.
the grain is one of my favorite scenes in all the Lethal Weapon series.
Yeah.
It shows, and here's this is the success of Lethal Weapon, right there in a nutshell. Is that even when it's a total failure, the movie is a failure on multiple levels of structure and originality.
Mm-hmm.
They have cultivated very special relationships and created a relationship between Riggs and Murtaugh, and then Murtaugh and his family. That you believe in this unit as a people that care about each other. And that scene where he's teaching his son how to shave with the grain is totally earned. It's just earned.
Yes. It's interesting you say that, because the other thing that I think is really well earned is there's a scene, because while Murtaugh's going through this, Mel Gibson is like, he has a speech where he's like, "Your family is my family." You know, like
Well, that's
like
the whole
I have
plot
three
thing
wonderful
is
kids and
selling
I
the
love
house.
them and they're yours.
the whole plot of them selling the house.
Yes.
The house is always in danger in these movies,
Yes.
which is the symbolism. Come on, people, it's not that hard to figure out, right?
It's true.
Like because the Murtaugh home and family is the sort of emotional core, and Riggs attaches himself or is attached to that, and so that house being in danger is that family being in danger. So when Murtaugh's going to retire, which every single episode now he's going to retire, so that's a whole other thing.
Right.
But when Murtaugh's going to retire and sell the house, it is a threat to Mel Gibson as it's a threat to Riggs' character on every level.
Yeah.
And yeah, and he addresses that, and I thought it was pretty well done.
Yeah. I have a couple other things I could say, but you go. I've been talking a lot.
Okay. At the beginning of the second season of a television show by the name of Friday Night Lights, there was an event. Okay, there was an event that occurs that people who are diehard fans of this show hated.
Yes.
I was probably not one of them. I didn't love this event. And when you watch Friday Night Lights, I don't say if, people, because I say when, because get your life together.
Yeah.
But when you watch Friday Night Lights and you get to the second season, you will immediately see how people hated this, even if you don't. And you probably will. Most people do. Here's why I didn't hate it, even though it definitely is really problematic.
Mm-hmm.
And out of character and ridiculous.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if it's out of character, but ridiculous for the show. Out of character for the show. They took this event, and what they did was it's like they did it, and the moment they did it, they were like Ron Burgundy in the bear pit. I immediately regret this decision. But, like Ron Burgundy in the bear pit, they were in the bear pit. And they didn't get rid of this event, and they didn't pretend it hadn't happened. And what the writers and director, the people who created the show and worked on the show did was, in my opinion, they took these characters that in the first season they had basically worked so hard to make amazing. And they had said, okay, now that they are in this implausible, stupid situation, how would the characters that we created that are very realistic and amazing characters, how would they plausibly interact and react in this situation?
Yes.
And so they do this whole thing in that whole season where there's a guy and a girl that are involved, and the girl has no reason to be attracted to the guy because he's a goon. But she is attracted to him, and it's because he's done something for her, and they're tied together through trauma, and it makes perfect sense, actually.
Yes.
It's a completely ridiculous situation, but the way that they interact and the way that they're codependent and the way that they are loving each other without her actually being in love with him, really, it actually makes perfect sense.
Yes.
Always have maintained that as bad of a decision as Friday Night Lights made in making this one thing happen at the beginning of the second season, the way they followed it up the best way they possibly could without
agree with you.
pretending it hadn't happened.
I agree with you. I totally agree with you.
Lethal Weapon 3 is a movie where the characters are, in every situation, it was almost like the creators put them in a completely implausible and stupid situation. There is no police work done in this movie. Basically, Riggs and Murtaugh, and this happens a little bit in Lethal Weapon 2, but it happens a lot in Lethal Weapon 3. Riggs and Murtaugh are police officers in Los Angeles. You may have heard of it. It's one of the largest cities in America. And they just keep stumbling, not stumbling like idiots, bumbling, but literally like they're going to do something and they turn around and they witness something happening. And then the next scene they go to do something and they witness something happening in LA, and both of these things happen to be related.
Yeah.
Like they're related crimes perpetrated by the same people in Los Angeles, and these two cops keep running into it by accident. Now, this happened in Lethal Weapon 2. But Lethal Weapon 2 is so good you almost don't care. But by Lethal Weapon 3, it's just like they're literally just putting Riggs and Murtaugh into just absurd situations.
Yeah, completely.
But you have but it's not just that you have come to love Riggs and Murtaugh from Lethal Weapon 1 and Lethal Weapon 2, although that's true. It's that somehow they managed to continue to develop the relationship between Riggs and Murtaugh and the Murtaugh family in such a real and authentic way.
Yeah.
And I don't know how they do it because they're so what's that word? Where you're not good at something. Inept. They're so inept at creating a plot that's plausible that it
Yeah,
blows my mind how competent they are at developing the relationships of these characters.
agreed.
And it is as if they took these characters that are totally realistic and wonderful and were like, we're going to put them in terribly stupid situations, but then how would these people actually react to those situations? Danny Glover, this is Danny Glover's best. This is Danny Glover's best, in my opinion. And the work that they do with him, the development that they do, where basically in this movie, Riggs has become, in this movie, is the more stable one.
Is the rock for
And
yes.
Murtaugh is the one who gets a chance to fall apart.
Yep.
And Riggs uses his. There's even a scene where when Murtaugh shoots his gun off accidentally and he's like about to freak out, Riggs acts crazy, and people all just go, "Oh, that's Riggs acting crazy, and he must have done something." And it's like he uses what people think about him to protect his friend.
Yes.
Really fascinating if you care about Lethal Weapon mythology. I just said those words. But so that for all that stuff, the development of the Murtaugh family and the Riggs Murtaugh connection, the way that Riggs and Murtaugh act together, this is why this is the kind of relationship you want to see buddy cop movies have.
Agreed. If I can talk about implausible situations in this movie for a second.
Oh, today's my 22nd birthday.
That is exactly what I was going to talk about. Okay.
Let's put on your red shirt, Star Trek Extra.
Yes. This is a term from Star Trek that has made it into a fairly general lexicon, but the term red shirt comes from the original series of Star Trek, where a named character such as Kirk would go down with another main character to the planet's surface, with another main character, say Spock, and a third person who was always wearing the red shirt of just an ensign aboard the Starship Enterprise.
Right.
And someone would die. And it was never going to be Kirk or Spock.
Right. Someone needs to die so that you realize, like the first shot that makes you realize something bad happened there.
Yes. So, a note to all of the tertiary characters in action movies. When you are near people who seem to get into a lot of gun fights, right? Don't beg to go with them. And if you do beg to go with them, if you want to survive, for God's sake, don't say it's your birthday.
Today's my 22nd birthday. I turned 22 today. Well, you're going to know.
Oh, by the way.
You might as well have pulled the gun out and just shot himself. And because at that point it was
Spoiler.
over. Yeah. I mean, yeah.
Yeah. And his death actually serves a fairly important plot purpose because the extreme to which they go with the gun violence is the actual case revolves around cop killer armor piercing ammunition.
Right.
And he is perfectly covered. He is behind cover. He's behind a metal barrel, but the guy sees where, like, he saw, like, the bad guy sees him duck behind the barrel, so he knows he's behind there, and so he just shoots once, and it goes through both sides of the barrel and kills the cop. And that's the first death. I think it's the first death where you see that's what they're dealing with.
So you know it's possible.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. Yep.
The bad guy.
Yeah.
Terrible.
Yep.
Like, the first time you see him,
and yet memorable for me, and I can't figure out why.
Fair.
I really can't.
Fair.
Like Jack Travis is a very memorable bad guy to me, but I don't think he's a good bad guy.
I do applaud him for killing someone by putting them in cement. Job well done there.
And then saying that we can. This is a relationship we can build on.
Right? Like, if only he had, like, the David Caruso sunglasses to, like, whip off. Like,
yep.
So yeah, he also the bad guy in Zorro, where he is also not a good bad guy, but yet strangely memorable. I like that. I think I agree with you. One of the first things you see him do in the movie, he's an ex-cop. One of his guys has been captured and is sitting in an interrogation room. He goes in and kills the guy and leaves. And it's like, even if he didn't know that there was a camera because there was a hidden camera, so they see his face. But like, he had to sign in, and
Well, you don't know what he signed in as, right? He has like a fake ID. You never know what he signs in as. That's the thing.
Okay, still, that's fairly thin. It's not like people don't know him around the.
I just thought it was funny that when he kills him, he shoots him 3 times in the chest, and then and then he reaches over, and you see the blood come out the back, and then he reaches over and touches him to check his pulse. Really? He's dead. By the by.
Right. You have done your job.
You shot him 3 times in the chest, point blank.
Indeed.
He's not alive anymore.
Indeed. What else you got?
2 things. Joe Pesci's character still works in this one. I think by the 4th one it falls apart completely, but
Sure.
I like what they do with him in this one. I think it's really clever, and of course the way that they treat him, which is just downright abusive, for some reason is funny, and I can't figure out why.
Right.
They're really not good people sometimes.
It's true. It's true.
And then if you want to see the logical or the illogical extension of how cruel they can be, watch the Bad Boys movies with Will Smith and Martin Lawrence, because the way that they treat people is downright inhuman. And it's like it's like weird, actually, when you watch Bad Boys 2, how mean they are as people. You're like, I'm rooting for you.
Right.
But that's that guy who's a terrible person who made that. And then Michael Bay. And then the other thing I want to say is Rene Russo. How do we can't not talk about Rene Russo? Because Rene Russo.
She might. Now you said something like we're in a part of Mel Gibson's career where he's just being paired with other impossibly beautiful people.
She used to have been a model, so
right. But if not for that, I think this might disprove your "she's never been more beautiful," because, I mean, she has been this beautiful in a lot of movies. The Thomas Crown Affair comes to mind, for example.
This is a problem, though, because you've got to look at what she did before that. Like,
okay.
Yeah, I mean, she was in Major League, Mr. Destiny, One Good Cop, Free Jack, and then Lethal Weapon 3. And she is pretty gorgeous in this movie. I mean, I don't think you can make her... I think she's just gorgeous. Like, I just think she's gorgeous.
Major League, I mean, you know.
She's adorable in Major League.
Yeah.
But anyways, so...
But I'm not prepared to use this as proof that this doesn't that your theory is wrong.
I almost feel like she makes Mel Gibson better looking in this movie. I mean, she is
I
just.
Agree with you.
I think she's a supermodel. We can just agree that she's already earned her keep on that level. I think I think Rene Russo, by the way, is a very interesting actor, because I think that she is someone who came in and it would have been very easy to say this is a woman who's made it on her looks, except I find her to be an exceptionally good actress.
She
has never won any awards. She's never won any awards. I don't think she's ever been nominated for anything even, but I think that she is a very good actress who is always fits into her part really well and isn't just eye candy by any stretch of the imagination. There's something going on in her eyes in every movie that makes you believe that she knows more than she lets on. And
yes.
I mean, when she plays a therapist in Tin Cup, there's no question that she should be playing a therapist.
It's not easy to fit into an ensemble like the Lethal Weapon movies have cultivated, and she does so seamlessly.
Agreed completely, and they make a character that's so made for Riggs, it's just perfect and beautiful.
Indeed.
So, I mean, it's obviously a little bit overdone. Like, she
yes.
also watches The Three Stooges and has all sorts of weird scars and knows karate. Can we just talk about the fact that, for whatever reason, and it doesn't seem it's because he's getting older, Mel Gibson goes from, in the first one, basically being a superhero when it comes to being able to kick and punch and, I mean, basically the greatest fighter alive. I mean, Lethal Weapon, he is this, like, fighting machine.
Right.
By Lethal Weapon 3... there's really nothing special about him as an action hero, and it's kind of weird.
Yeah.
I mean, other than being a great shot, he's still a great shot.
Yep.
But, like, when he fights with Jack Travis at the end, there is no way in which Jack Travis should be able to win that fight.
Right. The guy that takes down the unfortunate Asian torturer and Mr. Joshua from Lethal Weapon 1
is not going to be beaten up by Jack Travis. It's not going to happen.
Pureed Jack Travis. I mean,
it's they don't really they don't do anything to explain that, and it's very confusing to me. But that's fine. Whatever. Lethal Weapon 3, third best Lethal Weapon movie.
It's true.
Very interesting. It's the kind of thing where it was I could see, I love these characters so much. I'm still up for Lethal Weapon 5. I'll go ahead and say it.
At this moment, I am too. I reserve the right to change my mind after seeing Lethal Weapon 4.
Oh God, I saw Lethal Weapon 4 a couple months ago by accident, and I'm not ready. I know I'm gonna have to watch it again in a few weeks, and I'm not psyched.
I'm sorry.
Let's talk about what we have coming up. It's a very exciting time to be part of Project
Yes.
Melway.
We've got next 3 weeks. We've got Forever Young.
Yep.
Never seen it.
Oh, okay. I
We've
saw it
got-
once. Don't worry.
We've got The Man Without a Face, which I believe
Yes.
was his first directing credit.
Yes, that is correct.
Never seen it.
Ooh, this is a very
Yeah.
exciting time for you.
And then Maverick. Totally seen it. But enjoyed it. So
I love
you know
Maverick.
what?
Maverick is in my top 3 or 4 Mel Gibson movies. It is that high.
I'm excited
It
to
is-
watch it
it
again.
is
It's been a
way,
while
way
since
high
I've
up.
seen it. Say again?
I would also like to point out that for Forever Young, Elijah Wood is in it
Awesome.
as a young little chap,
Awesome.
and he serenades a girl by singing "You Are My Sunshine." Enjoy.
I have to go because I need to watch this movie right now. Awesome.
I don't
So-
actually. That might be a spoiler. I don't remember. I don't remember the context of it or what happens around it. I just remember that he does that, and I remember thinking, "You Are My Sunshine" is the most depressing song in the world.
Oh.
Depressing, and by the way, and look this word up if you're not sure what I mean by it, totally codependent. I mean, it is like, I base my entire life on you, and I dream things about you, and I hope that you like me too, or else I'll kill myself. It's like,
Yes. Yep.
maybe not a love song.
Maybe
maybe
not.
not.
So that's what we've got coming up. Forever Young, Man Without a Face, and Maverick.
So excited.
This was so Lethal Weapon 3, the third best Lethal Weapon movie. Still pretty darn good. You know? Yeah.
Definitely
Enjoyable
now
action
in the
flick.
land of cliched action films, like purely squarely in that place.
Yes. Agreed.
But and now really defining like its own little, like, now it is officially, this is what you have to have. Oh my gosh, we totally forgot to say this. And Mel Gibson chasing after some other vehicle in a very inexplicable
Yes,
way.
right.
This time
Has to run
chasing
after
after
a
a
vehicle.
train.
Yes.
Chasing after an armored car vehicle first, and then
Mm-hmm.
chasing after a train. The inexplicable Mel Gibson chasing after something has to happen, and does. Don't worry.
He runs really well. That's what I'll leave it on. He runs really well.
He's good at running.
It's true.
Way to go, MG.
Well done, MG. This has been, ladies and gentlemen, another installment of Project Melway, brought to you by the Gibsonian Institute.
You're
Yes.
welcome, world. For the service that we provide, you're welcome.
Yep. This has been Second Breakfast. I'm Andy Roth, alongside Phil Duvall. We'll see you again real soon. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.